I'm Adam Osland. We got Chuck Mockler. We're waiting to see if Will Updike can join us at some point, but we do have a special guest joining us today in Law Murray of The Athletic. I am the law. We love him. He does fantastic work. The definitive write-ups on Clippers, reports, trade deals. The Athletic is where you can get it all. He's the reason I sign up there. He took the baton from Jovan Buhan and has been off and running with it like FloJo. Law, thanks for doing this today.
And thank you guys. I'm really happy to get a chance to talk some hoops.
So coming up, we will get into the draft with Law, but first there was some news that broke earlier today, and it was regarding Bradley Beal. And I'm not saying it was out of nowhere because a lot of people anticipated this, but it sounds like if they are going into a rebuild mode, he could become available from the Washington Wizards. And it just so happens that Michael Winger now is in control of all basketball operations for the state of Maryland. So
is that his new title, basketball czar of Maryland?
I think you're selling this. I think you're selling this short because they got a whole region, man. The district. He probably got VA over there too.
Yeah, the DMV. It's probably the whole thing.
So, Law, how realistic is it for the Clippers to bring in a guy who's making almost $60 million coming up in the next couple of years on his contract?
Yeah, y'all see the roster the Clippers have right now? What you asking me to do, man? Like y'all mad at Paul George, and then y'all want to look at Bradley Beal's numbers and get excited?
I am not mad at Paul George, for the record. I don't know who's mad at him right now.
The proverbial.
I mean, look, I love Bradley Beal, but I knew when Michael took that job that it was just going to be a matter of when, not if, that conversation happened. Like we didn't even get to draft week, and we already had this news break because you didn't need it to be Haley's Comet to see it. Like Bradley is an exceptionally talented player. The contract speaks for itself. Unfortunately, the contract speaks for itself. Like, what are you asking for here, man? Like, Bradley has been I hate starting with negatives, but in terms of durability, in terms of like where Bradley's been shooting the three from, as far as the defense, as far as so much, like Bradley, he hasn't even been the guy that he was when he last had Russ.
Right.
Does that sound familiar? You know what I'm saying? Like he had Russ for 1 year, and that dude dropped 31.3 points. That dude left, and ever since it's been like, I need Russ.
Like, yeah, but you had to defer to Kuzma some. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's like, congratulations, the Washington Wizards won this year's award of totally uninspiring offense despite three guys dropping 20 a game. It was and it was a close battle between Brad's Wizards and his twin up there in Portland, Damian Lillard, who I'm sure y'all want to ask about too. You know, those dudes had 3 20-point scorers. What did it get them? So, I mean, like, this is the reason why I'm so conservative when it comes to moves being made for certain star talents. It's like,
right,
there's a reason these dudes are in this situation. You are better off. There's a reason the Clippers built the team that they built. So if you can get Bradley Beal for the minimum, hell yeah, you know. But short of that, nah, I'm not trying to entertain it for too long.
So that's my thing, is people kept saying like the proverbial cost would be low, and I'm like, the literal cost though is so high that the cost can't be low. Like, there's no way to move if we have three guys making that much money with this new CBA. It makes no sense to me, just especially from a finance perspective, how it would happen. Like,
this man is about to make $57 million in 3 years. He has that option.
Hey, the cap goes up.
Okay.
Not that high.
It's spiked for KD.
How much KD making this year? Tell me how much KD's making this year.
Less than Bradley Beal. That's for damn sure. 40? 45?
42. 40, just under 43. 42.9.
I was there.
Like,
that's it.
Yeah, what you want me to talk about?
So no insider trading just because Michael Winger's there, and he's not going to take Marcus Morris, Roku, Terance Mann, Avita
Michael,
Zubats.
look, Michael Winger would win Executive of the Year next year if he were to be able to pull that off. You don't even need a dude making the playoffs. Be the first Executive of the Year, I guarantee you, without actually making the playoffs, just for getting off of that deal with his former employer.
That's true. The former employer thing. Again, another thing where people think it's like a pipeline. So the Beal thing, not going to happen. The guy who wants Damian Lillard is our other co-host. He's not here, so we're going to spare you that discussion. The new CBA kind of does what we know about the new CBA. It feels like
yes, what we know about it.
Like we don't know.
Still waiting on the PDF, man.
Yeah, like we're kind of. It seems like really between a rock and a hard place. It's yet again margin moves. It seemed like what the Clippers are going to do if they're going to do anything. Like they're stuck. I'm not saying that's actually a bad thing. It's just how it feels like it's set up right now with what these aprons and everything are saying.
Thing is, you guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah, great.
Actually sounds better.
I had to switch up. Got a little microphone in here. We all, have, like I said, I haven't done anything in a minute. But the interesting thing is, like, the draft is next Thursday, and the teams, forget media. Like, I'm not trying to be Danny LaRue, but like the teams themselves don't even have the full document that is going to govern how contracts are done and how the league is regulated over the lifespan of this collective bargaining agreement. I find that to be interesting, like
That's
the
insane.
the whole part of being able to manipulate things is to actually have someone to read the damn thing. I got an appreciation for the front office guys who literally have people read it over. It's like, how do you think Andy Ellisberg does his job in Miami? Okay, like, because that dude just sits and reads, and they come out on top, man.
Yeah.
It's like you to Miami Heat. It's like, oh, we
Almost.
missed the playoffs. I bet you we're not doing it again next year. Like, and that is critical. So I feel like it's going to be a really silly summer because, how much is a guy going to be worth this year? When we go back 2-3 years from now, what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
And so what we do know is that the Clippers have they've been heartened by the realities of what we expect to see from the CBA.
Oh.
And that means that, I hope you enjoyed your Norman Powell, Robert Covington trade acquisition because he ain't getting that no more. None
of those home run plays anymore.
Nope. Hey, the good thing is we ain't got to worry about a guy like Norm getting hurt immediately after that trade. So, always a benefit. There's always silver linings. All right. And same thing with the buyout market. Y'all hated the buyout acquisition. Some of y'all did. I'm not going to, in general, I'm not talking about anyone specific, but obviously it was polarizing what happened at the buyout market for the Clippers this year. Guess what? You ain't got to worry about that no more. Like, buyout market will not have nearly the same options or nearly the same kind of teams dipping in to get some of those options in the future. What does that mean for the Clippers? It means that you got to do a lot more work and you have to be a lot more successful at things that you weren't great at. Namely, the draft. It's easy to say, hey, we got Terance Mann at 48. Well, what you going to do at 48 this year? Because that's exactly the same kind of pick you got. When's the last time you were excited about a Clippers first-round pick? Everyone loves saying, man, we need to trade for picks. One of the best parts about the Paul George trade is that they didn't have to do anything like draft Jerome Robinson again, okay? So the Clippers have to win in areas that they have not been consistently good at winning at in years past. And the fact is, I don't have to say that. That's what the team understands. That is the vibe going into this draft. That's what I can tell you. They understand that you need to get cheap talent that isn't just going to look good, in the locker room and off the bus and in the G League. Like, guys need to start contributing. And to me, that doesn't just mean whoever they wind up with after next Thursday night. It means guys like Jason Preston and Brandon Boston Jr. I don't know if they'll be on the team next year, but if they are, they need to be in a position where all that development, although, shout out to the Showcase Cup champion Ontario Clippers.
They were killing people this year.
Hey, Moussa Diabate, that dude isn't on the Grammy trip, and they make the G League playoffs this year. Real talk. Well, guess what? Them dudes need to show what all that development will translate like to the big team, especially if certain things go a certain way in free agency and in the trade market as soon as next week.
Before we get more into the draft and the 30th pick and all that, and maybe this could come into play in this scenario, Chuck mentioned we won't talk about Damian Lillard because it looks like they want to double down with Dame and try to find that small forward. But you talked about this recently on an article. You talked about the situation with Paul George and them dangling the number 3 pick and Simons, maybe something else. Is that something that could happen, or do you still feel like the Clippers are committed to 2-1-3?
They're committed, man. They're committed in a vacuum, and they're committed with the ulterior factors that include that stadium that you see when you go in and out of LAX. Like, and I've thought about this. Sam Vecini is, first of all, he just dropped the Bible as far as I'm concerned, as far as getting ready for this draft. And shout out to all the work that he's been doing leading up to this point. This is Draft Guru Super Bowl. I used to work with Jonathan Gavoni, Mike Schmitz, who ironically up there in Portland. I used to work with those dudes. I'm just letting y'all know, like, this is a celebration for them. I wish we covered the rest of the league like we covered the draft. We get into basketball, we get into players, we get into fits, we get into what makes a guy tick. We get into what's real and what's not when you look at statistics. So with all that said, like, the Clippers are in we're trying to do this. Like, as much as Sam loves Scoot. And so, like, to be honest with you, we're talking about number 3 in Portland. Like, I know Charlotte could say to themselves, you know what, a wing makes more sense than a guard, but we're going to laugh at whatever Charlotte does next week. Like, let's just be real. Sacramento Kings, you have graduated, and the Charlotte Hornets are now the team that we gonna believe in the next guy they draft, the next pick after the dude they draft.
Wait, is Jordan still there or not? Because that usually adds a layer to it.
I mean,
his track
it's both.
record.
Anytime you got one foot out the door and one foot in, you two different people as far as I'm concerned. So, for any means of convenience, Jordan's in and out.
That's a different type of last dance.
That is exactly. And so I don't even believe Scoot would be available at 3. Like, Scoot is the better player if we're talking about anyone else. If we're talking about Brandon Miller, if we're talking about Cam Whitmore, like,
right.
I just don't see Charlotte at, like, you're going to find fits, and LaMelo Ball, Terry, like, you can trade Terry Rozier just like you could trade Gordon Hayward. And so, I mean, is Brandon Miller a better fit? Yeah, but is Brandon Miller as talented as Scoot Henderson? No. Like, that's just really what it comes down to. And so we're talking about Paul George and what Portland winds up doing. Now, here's what's interesting about Portland. All that noise about the number 3 pick, they would love to trade the number 3 pick and get people to think that Scoot Henderson is the guy that's going to be available with that pick.
Oh,
you'd be hella salty if that was not Scoot there, right?
That's true. That's a good point.
Look at last year. This is lying season, okay? This is why I bring up what I bring up about
silly offseason, lying season. I love it.
You're hearing all the smoke from Portland. You ain't hearing that from Charlotte. Oh, Charlotte's going to draft Brandon Miller. Why the hell would they do that? Like, besides the fact that what we already know about Charlotte, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh yeah, I can justify them doing something like that. But, like, let's be real. It is Portland's interest to generate interest for a trade for a guy who might not be Scoot Henderson. I don't believe Scoot's going to be there. I really don't believe it. I would believe it if Scoot was just, a good prospect on the same level as Whitmore or the Thompsons or Brandon Miller. He's not. Like, have you seen Scoot?
He's number
Dude can't
one.
shoot, but
huge.
like he's like the Markelle Fultz version of can't shoot, as in he won't need to shoot. Damn it! Like that dude is that dude looked like a transformer. Okay, like straight up and down. And so like Portland would love to be able to get a market and make a trade that, regardless, just to appease Dame. But I don't think that's going to happen. Now, let's say that Charlotte does mess around. They draft Brandon Miller, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, again, why wouldn't Portland just pick Scoot? Dame is 30.
I agree.
He's had injuries, both legitimate and, the tank version that we saw this past spring. He's a small guard who is merely a good playmaker, right? Like Dame has always been a better producer of points and shots for himself than others. And defensively, Dame is tough and he'll defend his guy, but is he, is Damian Lillard's talents making you a great defense? No, like Portland's been one of the worst defenses in the NBA for 3 years in a row now, something like that.
Right.
Like, that is like, just draft Scoot, damn it. Do you know who Portland's backup point guard was?
We need that on a shirt.
Do you know who their backup point guard was last year?
Absolutely no idea.
Keon Johnson. Keon Johnson was
a
their
trick
backup
question.
point guard
How
last
dare
year.
you?
It was a trick question. That's why I asked you.
That was the last. Are you telling me
we're not drafting Scoot? We're keeping and we're keeping Dame because of Keon Johnson?
Right.
Tell me. Is that what you're doing? There's nothing in the rule books that says you have to start a guy because you drafted him top 3.
Right.
Okay. And so, like, if you're Portland, it's like, sure, you'd love to get a trade. You'd love to get a Paul George. But also, who are you fooling? Like, you're hoping that if you can't draft Scoot himself, that you can find a trade for not Scoot. So if you're the Clippers, and I'll be real, like if it's Scoot, it's like that's a pivot. It's a pivot that I don't believe they'll make just because I believe they're trying to give T. Lue the best chance to succeed, Kawhi the best chance to succeed. I mean, Scoot is great for the future, but you're not trying to win for the future. You're trying to win a championship because Steve Ballmer wants a championship. And, that's why this question is out there. It's like, are the Clippers close? But I hope we get along to this podcast about that part of the narrative. Sure, it would be the best move for the future, but this is not a team that is concerned with the future right now. If they were, I'm not sure if T. Lue would be the coach. I'm not sure if certain guys would have gotten promotions in the front office.
Ooh, okay.
This is a team that believes that they can do this. And I am under the belief that they should continue to believe that way as well. But yeah, if there's Scoots out there, then sure. But I just I'm just very hesitant to put a whole lot of gas, a whole lot more than what we're talking about now, about a player like Scoot, who I just really believe for one reason or another ain't gonna be there.
Yeah, that's a good call. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna talk about exactly what you were just talking about, which is the Clippers are a team of right now. So where are they right now? We got ads coming up. They've been loud for some people who've listening. We've gotten complaints about that. If that's been your case, your experience, go ahead and turn it down. And then we're coming back with Law Murray, talking where the Clippers are at right now, because that's what we should all be focusing on. We got ads coming up in 3, 2, 1. All right, we are back with Law Murray from The Athletic, talking Clips. Here on Clips and Dave, you can find us anywhere you can find podcasts. On YouTube, we're at Clippers Podcast. On Twitter, we're at Clippers Pod. So, Law, let's get into it. Adam was just applauding you after you said that.
And we'll continue to.
And we'll continue to.
After
you
the
mentioned
entire
that the
break, I was
Clippers
clapping.
need to focus on winning now and seem to be ready to win now. I mean, Adam, we know how he feels. Is it just health? A lot of people, there was the great Pena article in The Ringer about how, it's the team is built well. We have a fantastic coach. We have 2-3. When they're healthy, we know what they can do. Is it all just hope for health since we're kind of in this margin move CBA scenario?
In the end, of the day, the beginning and the end of the day, it is health. I have to say it like that because you believe in, and when I say you, I mean like more than media or fan base or whoever does the devil's work in Las Vegas. Like you start with the 2 stars, on day one, right? And at the end of the day, the Clippers under Tyronn Lue have been eliminated with Kawhi Leonard not able to play in the last game or the last series or in the play-in tournament. So, like, when you look and go, how did our season end? How did we get from playing and traveling to packing it up for the summer? Every year, it's under T. Lue, it's been Kawhi wasn't there. And the last 2, it was Paul George not being there. Paul George didn't play in the playing game against the New Orleans Pelicans last year. Paul George missed the entire postseason this year. That means Paul George has not played a playoff game since the 2021 Western Conference Finals. That means Kawhi Leonard has not finished a playoff series since the Mavericks Game 7. And so at the beginning of the day, yes, like those are 2 guys that it's not an Embiid Simmons situation. It's not a Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant situation in Brooklyn. It's not just these dudes are good together. It's not just these dudes are getting along with each other. These dudes are invested and motivated to make it work here. Paul George is going on in GQ talking about winning a chip for the Clippers. Like he's literally got his parents at every game. Like he's still playing in Palmdale, man. Like that is a motivating factor. Like Kawhi Leonard, like literally, we don't talk about Kawhi as much as Paul as far as like the other people around him, but he literally has his family at the game too. It's a different situation. I can tell you that makes decision making on a team level harder because instead of, like Kevin Durant saying this time a year ago, I need you guys to trade me or fire Steve Nash and Sean Marks. You got Paul bragging about how him and Lawrence are collaborating and whatnot.
Jerry West is on the pod. Like, you
have Kawhi who, is big on like the collaboration that he has with all levels of the organization, with Steve Ballmer, with the front office and the head coach. Like he literally has his best friend on the coaching staff. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Those dudes are more motivated. And guess what? It does make it harder to just break them up. You saw Blake and Chris Paul. It was easy to break Blake and Chris Paul up. We knew these dudes didn't get along no more. You know what I'm saying? The State Farm commercial didn't have Blake anymore. So like it was like it's only a matter of time. And so it's health in the beginning and the end, but then there's that middle. And that's where you can't look at it as guys just need to be on the court and be healthy. We saw some thoroughly unserious basketball last year. Those dudes could not play good basketball. I'm not talking about Kawhi and Paul anymore, but it is a symptom of being on the same team as Kawhi and Paul that those dudes did not play well enough consistently. And again, part of it is those dudes playing, a string of games together. They literally didn't play 4 straight games together until mid-January.
Right.
Until they were 1 game under 500. They lose in Utah, second night of a back-to-back to start that trip. Then they win 5 straight, and the loss was a rest game in Cleveland. And then they won the next game in Chicago. That was the first time all year that those dudes played 4 straight games together, and by that time, the team was gone. I talk about Reggie Jackson a lot. Reggie Jackson new NBA champion Reggie Jackson. Shout out to my man. But like that dude knew going into the year that if something were to give with this team, he would be the guy compromised. He was the only one who was entering a contract year. Everyone else had multiple years left on their deal. When things went sideways, and they went sideways 3 different times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it?
I'm talking just Reggie and his situation.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. You know, wasn't it 3 times? Come on,
big 3 times. Yeah.
How long was this season?
Yeah,
That's something I would say, Law.
Like,
Only 3. Like,
sideways.
come on.
Hey, look, if you go sideways 3 times, this is like geometry now. Like,
yeah, we're at 270, I guess. You're going,
yeah, exactly, right?
Degrees. Yeah,
it's like, God damn,
hardest way to take a right
by now,
yeah.
right? And that's exactly what happened. It's like, man, it went sideways 3 times, and they took off.
They couldn't go straight back again. Yeah.
But like by then, the team was gone. Like Reggie wasn't the dude no more.
Mm-hmm.
You knew you had to get a real backup center instead of, basically exhausting Moses Brown's 2-way contract.
Yep.
You had to understand that certain dudes couldn't play together. We all talked about the 3-guard lineups, but really, Luke Kennard and Norman Powell had the same weaknesses, and those were exploited on both ends of the floor. As much as we talked about Luke as a point guard option or Norm as a point guard option, there was a reason neither one of those dudes were the point guard options. For Luke, it was a lack of aggression of making plays within the offense. For Norm, it was too much aggression because that dude's great if he's got a line to the cup, but if he's got to make an interior pass, if it's a Zubats, it's going the other way. Mm-hmm. And so that's how you wind up with Mason Plumlee on the team as a real backup center. It's how you wind up with Eric Gordon, which costs you going from the 20th pick to the 30th pick in this year's first round, because as flawed as Eric Gordon is, most of those flaws a byproduct of him being a 15-year NBA veteran.
Right.
Eric Gordon still has the chest to defend, unlike Luke, and has the competency in a pick and roll, unlike Norm, right? It was those kinds of things. And you still wind up with a guy like Russ as your starter, a guy like Bones, who people get way too excited about. Bones is an NBA player, but reliable starter is probably asking way too much, right? But like they blew up the team, and like there was just so much going on. There was a lack of urgency, even though guys literally sat on the die on media day talking about closing windows and how they needed to get it done. Like they didn't. When the Detroit Pistons came to town, they forgot about all that stuff. Like when the Houston Rockets came to town, they still kind of, played pity pat on a Sunday afternoon until the fourth quarter. So it's stuff like that where they do need to compete. Like Lawrence isn't just, he's not paying lip service when he talks about the level of competition. All of them basically, and you know what? It was the entire Western Conference. Part of the reason the Clippers played unserious basketball for so many portions of the year is because they looked at the West and was like, we got some credit built. Like
it was open. People kept trying. Exactly. It was so wide open.
And you know who else did the same thing? The Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets
they had some bad stretches.
Mid-January on were by themselves in first place in the Western Conference. And they get to a certain part in early March, and they're like, Ja just did what?
Yeah.
Like, Ja Morant going to be out for a while? Man, we going to put this thing in cruise control. Yeah. We already know who we are as a team.
Why did they know who they are as a team?
The only team in the Western Conference that had their 5-man lineup play more minutes together in the West all season was the Sacramento starting lineup. A Sacramento team that had never gone to the playoffs before. And also, Sacramento, look at their schedule in March. Everyone could see that Sacramento was going to go through hell. And shout out to the Kings, because they looked at that schedule, and when I talk about the schedule, I'm not talking about just the teams you're facing. I'm talking about time zones. I'm talking about 5 and 7s. Sacramento had a ridiculous schedule. If the Clippers had the schedule in March that the Clippers had, y'all would have been freaking out. Okay. We all saw that. The Denver Nuggets saw that. That's how the Denver Nuggets were literally a 500 team the last quarter of the season meaning 20 games.
Yeah.
Okay. The Nuggets they played unserious basketball for a whole quarter of the season, and it might have led people to sleep on them slightly because they backed into the 1 seed, going into the playoffs. Well, the Clippers, they kind of had that attitude, but in the middle of the bracket,
which is not where you need to have that attitude.
It isn't. But I'm trying to tell y'all, like, when I was on the road trip and the Grammy trip, we saw the minutes start elevating, the playoff minutes. It's like, oh snap, Kawhi and Paul are playing heavy minutes. Like T. Lou could tell you when we were in Brooklyn, we had to raise guys' minutes because we needed wins. We needed to play our best basketball. Everyone's looking at 10-4 and be like, man, Terance Mann was a starting point guard. Like, it's like, no. What's simple? They played Kawhi and Paul George together, high minutes, back-to-back games, back-to-back games. That's why they played their best. As soon as they got back home, right before the trade line, playing the Mavericks, it was, we're going to play basically 13 guys, which is what happened in the first quarter when Kyrie played his debut with the Mavericks. That was the last game for Luke Kennard, the last game for Reggie Jackson. John had already been hurt, but he was on the bench. All those dudes wound up getting traded. That's what happened. The next game, the game after the trade deadline, the Bucks come to town. Kawhi sits. Brandon Boston Jr. starts. Okay. Cool. And PG gets locked up by Drew. And after the game, he's like, hey, I know Bones was bragging about how the Clippers sent him a PJ, but we need another point guard in here. So that is like, the Clippers did not take the season seriously. And that was a reflection of the stars. It was a reflection of the guys who play with the stars. It was a reflection of the head coach, but it was a reflection of the organization. The organization was like, we're going to throw this roster together because we can just do it. And then Kawhi's knee stiffens up and he sprains an ankle and Paul's hamstring gets tender. And all of a sudden you're at a deficit. And then those guys get healthy and you're like, we just want to evaluate. Fully healthy going into the East Coast trip at the end of December. And you're struggling to beat the Detroit Pistons. You're losing 6 in a row. You got your evaluation. Your evaluation is this team did not fit the way you thought it would. That's an organizational thing. And so they know all of this now. I expect the organization to approach this offseason much differently than last year. The coaching staff, whereas last year there was a lot of energy and excitement about who was coming back, the coaching staff is now on a bit edge because they see what's happening across the league and what's happening here, and they don't have the level of security. You look at the stars, and they know they need to play up. Paul's out here getting the graphics team at Podcast P, let y'all know we going to get this thing right.
Yep.
And then you got role players who you already blew the team up. Everyone was like, running it back would be a mistake. They can't run it back. They literally blew up the roster with 20 games left. What running back are you asking for? Kawhi and PG played 10 games with Russ, a guy I don't know if he's going to be on the team. What running back are you talking about? But even with all that, there will be changes, and the changes ain't going to come from the draft. And it's not going to come from free agency. There will be some trades, and it will be fascinating to see when and how and who is involved.
La, who do you think is the starting point guard going into next season, and who's the backup?
Oh man, that's going to be interesting right there. So I talked about Chris Paul, and y'all people out here coming at me like I'm the one who said Chris was with Kim K. You know, like I'm just letting y'all know how they talk about Bull. Like I'm not saying that's everybody. I'm just saying might be some highly influential people. Same, you know, like. You can say one superstar ain't feeling Chris like that because we watch television. We've seen all the Suns.
We watch television.
We know what it's not like it's not a surprise. Secret.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Then we know that, you know, Kawhi would be cool. Like, I mean, I don't think that's even that crazy. Both things can be true. That's how things happen. Not everyone has the same relationship. I just am pointing out a relationship. Now, that being said, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with Russ. Russ is the guy I'm concerned with more than Chris Paul. Like, I just don't think the Suns or Chris are going to land in the destination of Chris is going to be with the Clippers and the Suns are going to help him get there. I don't think that's happening. And that's the only way I think Chris would wind up with the Clippers. because if Chris gets free, I think that more than likely there are other options for him. With Russ, it's going to come down to who's going to bid high enough. Who are the Clippers bidding with as far as trying to convince him to stay home and stay with a group that he knows has his back, that a coaching staff that can put him in positions of success. Is Russ a messy player? Yes, but there's a difference between Russ being a messy player with a star and coach ecosystem that is not set up to support him or not willing to support him versus what we saw this past winter and spring after he joined the Clippers. Like, Russ is not the dude that the Lakers made him out to be. But I'm also not going to sit here and be like, Russ is the answer, or Russ is the best, or Russ is the best answer.
Yeah. Are you convinced that he works with 2-1-3 still? We haven't seen much.
We haven't seen much, but I'm also not going to say it's a failure. I'm not going to say that it's the worst thing. I think Russ is a good option to have. And that is why T. Lue is the guy to trust. If T. Lue wasn't coaching, I'd be like, that ship has sailed. But T. Lue's coaching. And the best thing about T. Lue's season last year was the fact that he had Russ. He didn't want Russ just to, stick it to the front office or anything like that. It's like T. Lue is a former point guard, and T. Lue won a championship with crazy Kyrie Irving. As his point guard. I say crazy because that dude, they won a championship together, and a year later, Kyrie asked out. Like, that's what T. Lue had to deal with, okay?
Yeah. He was flat earth then. He goes way back.
Yeah. Like, I point these things out because it's like T. Lue had to literally deal with the, not knowing who the heck was going to play consistently for him on the star level, and then having replacement level at best talent at the point guard position before that. Like, or guys like, basically asking Paul George to be the point guard, which was great for the first 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter, you would see guys bogged down.
Yeah, he was throwing passes. Yeah.
Not a criticism on T-Man at all, but like Terance, the player that he is at his best when he's an everyman player. That dude just needs minutes. I think Terance should just to start, but not necessarily at the point guard spot. You need a ball handler who can facilitate and someone who can at least get guys to be their best version of themselves. And if you need to sit Russ, which we saw T. Lue do multiple times, both especially with Kawhi and Paul available, you had that. If you needed Eric Gordon to be that guy, you had that, right? So,
why do you think Terance Mann didn't have the love from Coach Lue when he was closing games in the 2021 playoffs? What changed to where he was on such a short leash and getting DMPs early on in the season?
I mean, Terance never got a true DMP this year. Terance played every single game except for the game where he got concussed. And the only reason he got concussed is because the Clippers blew a lead in Orlando.
That was crazy. I forgot.
That was one of the stupidest games of the year. If you had to go Letterman and put a top 10 together of Clippers games that gave you a concussion, that game would absolutely be on the list, right?
The Kawhi game winner going off kilter, like, just bad.
Yeah, like, so
brutal.
The thing with Terance, and I think Terance explained this, I'm going to mention it in this draft story I'm putting together, hopefully for tomorrow morning, is that Terance goes into these seasons and the coaching staff is like, what's Terance? Whatever he is,
he plays the six.
He's a guy who we're just going to use when we need somebody. And what happens every year? The Clippers need somebody, right? And that doesn't help Terance, but Terance is so good that he winds up outplaying dudes that the coaching staff thought was going to be ahead of him on the depth chart. It happens every single year. And the front office, again, I keep going back to this. The front office is kind of culpable in this because the front office, they really went in the last season being like, we don't need a backup center. Who needs a backup center? So what? The MVP of the league is a center, in your conference. Like, you don't need a backup center. And then T. Lue's like, I would
Terance
might play there. And then, like, I said that in Vegas and people rolled their eyes and I'm like, How many times do I got to put together the clip of that Hawks game when they were wearing the gray jerseys? The Clippers were wearing the gray jerseys.
Yeah.
And they were down. T-Lue benches everybody, and T-Lue and T-Man and Luke Kennard go off. And then T-Lue's like, oh, I guess we're winning this game. Let's put Kawhi in. And Terance was literally at center, setting picks and rolling and catching and finishing better than Daniel Oturu ever did. Okay? Like,
something was born out of that night, Nick Batum said.
Absolutely. And so what you have is a player in Terance who, and I hate the positionless term so much because it gives certain dudes a disservice and it gives some dudes way too much damn credit. We positionless. That means you got guys who do stuff that really like you're going to have Roku and Nico as your backup center. That means you have no interior threat, no offensive rebounding, no guys who actually do set screens. You know who the best screener was, according to Reggie Jackson, on the team outside the centers? Terance freaking Mann. So Terance winds up filling whatever role winds up being a role that needs to be played. Kawhi Leonard says he's not starting the first game of the year to maximize his minutes. Well, hey, Terance, looks like you're the backup small forward until Kawhi plays in the middle of the second quarter. Roku, you got in health and safety protocols. Well, I guess Terance is going to play. John Wall can't play second night of back-to-backs. All right, well, Terance, you're going to play the backup point guard role. Reggie, we're going to trade you in a month, and we got to figure this stuff out. Terance, till we figure this stuff out, you're going to start. You're going to start at point guard.
Right.
That's a disservice to Terance. It's a disservice to the role, but it's something where I guarantee you next year's coaching staff, they're going to look and be like, okay, whether Terance is starting or not, they're going to have to let him know what his role is. His role can't be the positionless jack of all trades that we're just going to use when shit hits the fan. Shit is going to hit the fan on day one on this team, and he needs to be part of how this team plays fundamentally, not just on the fly, random basketball. You need to put a depth chart together that includes him. That's not something they've needed. It's something that they've taken for granted because of the depth that they've accumulated. But right. I'm not sure when people joke and be like, how can you be too deep? Well, the Clippers were an example of how you can be too deep. You can have a bunch of players who are good NBA players who are competent on one side of the ball, but they don't necessarily fit together, and somebody's not going to play as much as they should. And the CBA is going to help them because they can't take that approach as much anymore.
They have to figure it out, is what you're saying. It's putting them in a position to basically really figure it out now without that. I don't know
telling
if
him
that's the right word, but
that's what happens with backups in the NBA. And we're going to watch the draft. We're going to see all these kids get drafted, and we're going to celebrate we're going to celebrate the fact that they're professionals now. These kids are probably guys who, when they were in high school, when they knew they had a chance to touch the pros, they had all these extra skills, these ball skills. Like basketball players on the pro level are incredibly skilled, but then you have to do different things to get on the court when you're a young player, especially if you're not a high draft pick with those 1% skills. So you go from being a ball dominant. Caleb Martin's a great example. This dude cooked at Nevada, all right, put up high numbers, didn't even get drafted. So that dude had to be a different kind of basketball player to make it as a two-way contract as an undrafted guy, even playing with his twin. And what that does is you got to show that you can play off the ball. You got to show that you can defend. You got to show that you can play hard, right?
Yeah.
And then when you show that and have some consistency in your role, you might be asked to do more with the basketball and show something there. And so when you have backups, that means that's really where the game positions. But when you have a starting lineup, that is a 5-man group that goes into practice knowing what they're doing day in and
every
day
single
out.
day. Yeah,
exactly. The starting point guard is not worried about being the backup small forward. The starting power forward isn't worried about having to, fill in on the wing and check a off ball guy who's running the baselines and whatnot. No, that guy is. Those starters are static positions. Dynamic positions are the backups. Terance has always been a second unit guy. I'm wondering to see if this is the year that changes and they go in and determine Terance has to be a part of a static lineup with the best players from the jump. That certainly wasn't the case this past year, which we all were not tripping about. It certainly wasn't the case going into the year after the 2021 playoffs, where it was established Terance is going to be in the second unit, but he's going to be a big part of the second unit because you're down guys. And obviously going into his first and second years, Terance is just happy to be on the damn team.
Right.
He's going into year 5 and he's going from a $2 million, not even $2 million, to a $10 million. If he's a part of your team and he's shown what he's been able to show, especially if you're ignoring an entire position like power forward, then you should strongly consider throwing Terance out there.
Law, because you're close with Coach Lue, you guys have had some interesting interactions here and there. You travel, you go to every game, road, home, away, doesn't matter. And you got to ask the tough questions. But I'm just wondering if you have any insight on this, because we've been bouncing this around a little bit over the last month. I think it was the Lob the Jam that talked about it first, but there's some speculation that the constant cycling at the point guard position and them trying to find that perfect piece in the 2-1-3 era, and they've yet to do so, is more about maybe what Paul George and Kawhi want, with less responsibility handling the ball in the court, than maybe what a point guard heavy favoritism Coach Lue. He said not favoritism, but he said himself that he has a proclivity, or he has a tendency to favor point guards. He said, I know you all love wings, but I was a point guard. I was a guard.
Tried hard.
Who is it? Who is it more on when it comes to trying to find that perfect fit? Do you think it's Kawhi and PG, or do you think it's Coach Lue? I know it could always be a little bit of both, but who do you think more is responsible for them just trying to figure that out?
It's Kawhi and PG. And let me tell you why that's Kawhi and PG. T. Lue is just as frustrated as everybody who's frustrated with him.
He wants to win. Like he doesn't like dealing with it.
He's not trying to run. He ain't trying to run the personnel department. He's not trying to, like T. Lue he's not Doc. Okay. Doc wins press conferences. T. Lue is like
a basketball coach.
T. Lue is Eric Spoelstra. That funniest thing about Eric Spoelstra is, not any untrained eye comments. The funniest thing about Eric Spoelstra is pregame playoffs. If you don't have a question in 5 seconds, dude is gone. He ain't waiting around. He'll look, he'll wink. He's gone. Find a GIF, post it, and tag me in it. That's who Eric Spoelstra is. That's who T. Lue is. T. Lue's not trying to talk about anything extra. He just wants to win. When T. Lue started, he said, y'all want to complain about point guards? PG, you going to be the point guard. And that's what happened. That's what happened. And so when you guys, when people are talking about, man, the Clippers guys, they don't play, load management, all this, which, by the way, I hate that. I ranted about that. Agreed. I mean, y'all didn't give that same energy to the Golden State Warriors this year. And them dudes had entire 8-man rotations not playing the second nights of back-to-back. But I digress. Like, T. Lue, he's frustrated too. He's like, man, I played with Kobe. I played with 40-year-old Mike. T. Lue hates load management and was very, very clear about that. Why does he hate load management? Because he wants to win. And he wants to win his way. T. Lue's stubborn, okay? He's stubborn. Sure. He is going to do things because he wants to do them, because he believes in what he's doing, and that is that. And he should. Look, he's an NBA head coach, an NBA champion twice over as a player and as a coach. If T. Lue carries himself like a dude who's won some championships, then that's why. Right. T. Lue didn't grow up, with some lollipop group of dudes. His rookie coach. I mean, not rookie coach, but he won with Phil Jackson, for crying out loud. Right. He played for Scott Skiles, who, go look up Scott Skiles. That dude used to quit teams just because he didn't like him. Scott Skiles is ruthless, man. T. Lue had to play for both Van Gundys. Okay, both of them dudes. So T. Lue ain't with the BS, man. And so he's looking at his roster and is like, I see how these dudes are. I need this kind of player. And that's really it. Everyone talks about favoritism at the point guard position. There might be other positions, and we'll get to that. But point guard, him and Reggie didn't click this year. It was funny looking at people be like, putting memes together about him and Reggie, and it's like, dude, Reggie and T. Lue they didn't have the same connection this year that they had the year before when Reggie had to be the guy. And even then, Eric Bledsoe started for a reason. T. Lue really wanted to make that work. Yeah. And after a while, he was like, I got to separate Eric and Reggie, and it was mainly because T. Lue wanted Eric to be that point guard, but Eric was just so incompatible with Reggie that it was like, it don't make sense. And guess what? It worked. Eric played way better as a backup. Okay. Yeah. Eric was effective, and it was great because they bamboozled the Portland Trailblazers.
Yes, they did.
Which Portland obviously asked for, because they looked at Eric and was like, hey, I know you played every single game, but like, we need you to retire right now.
Yeah. Could you please do the opposset? That would be great.
Yo, man, you're gonna score a bunch of points in China next year. Yeah. We just need this.
We don't have
to get Shaden Sharp. You know what I'm saying? Like, T. Lue got Rajon Rondo, and everyone was like, Rondo is a brain. I mean, not everyone, just Al Frank. Like he looked at that trade and it was like, Rondo's going to change everything. But, ball's going to be in Kawhi and PG's hands 60% of the time. We've heard that for 3 years now. Guess what? In the playoffs, T. Lue was like, I'm benching Rajon Rondo. Don't ask about it. He's not playing. Kawhi told JCR, all right, Rondo's going to get a chance. Western Conference Finals? No. He dribbled the ball off his foot. I'm not playing him again.
Right.
He lost his powers. He was good for them in the regular season. It completely fell apart.
He was the reason. He and T-Man were the reason they won Game 3. Rajon Rondo was not a complete failure. I want to just point that out. I hated that trade.
I think a lot of people did. Trade. Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, but it would be capped to say that Rondo was a complete failure. If you're grading that trade, give it a C or a C minus. Don't give it an F. Rajon was very good in that regular season, and Rajon Rondo in that Game 3 when they were down damn near 20 in the first quarter, already down 2-0 in that series, him and T-Man helped turn that thing around, and they win that game, and they wind up winning the series. So, the beginning and the end for Rajon Rondo is when he stared a hole through Kawhi Leonard in Game 5.
That was so crazy.
Yup. You ain't hear from Rondo again pretty much. So, but like, Tyronn Lue will bench a guy. He will bench a guy. He will not play a guy. He will say, this ain't it. And that's what,
But now everyone's screaming at the podcast and saying, what about Marcus?
And that's where there need to be changes. That's where it's like,
that's the stubbornness.
Why did Roku make sacrifices?
Right.
And Marcus, it took until March to basically do the same things. And even that was handled differently. So,
yeah.
And I will always come back to this. The front office, they made moves affecting every single position on the team except what? Except the 4.
Yep.
They had to adjust the point guard situation, completely blow that room up. They had to get a backup center, which they ignored the previous offseason, including when they got John Wall and Isaiah wound up moving on. They had the wing situation, of course, but the backup wings was Luke, and they had to adjust for that. They've made all those moves. They did not address the 4 at all. They basically brought the same dudes in, kept those dudes. We all saw what was going down. I thought when Marcus got ejected in Brooklyn, I was like, damn, he got ejected in Memphis too. Maybe this is the year. And that didn't happen. And I knew the vibes were a certain way, but we all saw it, and they still didn't do anything about it. Whether that was because they felt like they couldn't or they felt like they didn't need to, it was still an oversight. Guess what? T. Lue can't start anybody until late September, October. That means that don't blame T. Lue for anything that happens, if the same group of guys are in training camp together.
Right.
And that's where I leave it. Like, they know by the end of March, the coaching staff knew what it was.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. It was frustrating for all those guys. I feel for Marcus because
yeah.
I mean, Marcus
he did so much the year before. He was at him and Reggie were the 2 guys for the Clippers for a whole year, basically. Yeah. And everyone was like, this is great. And then they were also getting so much undue hate, it felt sometimes that year, where it's like, this is what the team looks like when Reggie and Marcus are the 1 and 2. What are you expecting here?
People want consistency in their lineups, and they want it to be like, hey, like keep keep T-Man in the starting lineup, but they also want change. And
as
it's like,
soon as it starts,
do something with the 4 position. You heard both, and it was kind of weird. The only reason Marcus got the rope that he got was because it was cold. Let's say this again. Kawhi and PG.
Right.
Notice how Marcus didn't leave the lineup until after PG's knee got compromised by Lou Dort.
Yeah.
Like, if that injury doesn't happen, I'm not sure Marcus gets benched. You know, Marcus didn't get benched until the Saturday night after Paul hurt his knee. And that's a lot of what matters. Like, the star players got the kind of pull, and the coaching staff already has enough to deal with. They're not trying to break it all up. And Roko's situation this past year, like, it was basically Justice Winslow, but everyone forgets Justice's experience with the Clippers because of how absolutely upside down that entire season was, especially at the beginning.
Good point.
Like, Justice was not playing, and then things changed, and they needed a backup power forward because they decided to start Nico and Marcus together, whereas the original plan was for Marcus to start, Nico to be the backup 4 off the bench. Paul obviously is your starting small forward, but you know, when Paul was having his elbow issues, and then Nico got over the COVID issues, and when he had the bone bruise in his foot, by then, early January, T. Lou's like, well, we need to start Nico and Marcus together in a way to kind of, and Amir was starting at the 2 because the team decided that was the look that they were going with. They were going to go with a look that approximated what it looks like when you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. You know, they didn't play that way until they lost Paul and was like, we got to figure this out. That's opened up the backup power forward spot. Justice was filling that spot. Justice played great basketball in January. And then he gets traded for Rocco, a player who, when he came here, the team was not committing to Rocco. There was even a thought that they might flip Rocco. He got traded here a week before the trade deadline. But Rocco was...
Clippers fans were saying he was washed when they brought him in. I don't know about bringing in Rocco. I like Norman Powell, but Rocco, I think he's done. He wasn't done.
Because that Portland team was embarrassing defensively, and Rocco was a big part of a starting lineup that included Norm and Rocco, with a bunch of guys who they were basically black, red, and white cones for the first half of the season when they were trying to win games.
Right.
That's and it's like, yeah, like, you weren't looking at Rocco, who I think missed, I want to say, at least his last 10 threes with the Blazers. Like, Rocco's shooting streakiness is legendary. It goes all the way back to Philadelphia. And so, like, yeah, no one was like going to commit to anything about Rocco from a fan level, from a front office level, from a coaching level. But Rocco was an outstanding fit as a backup 4, playing next to a true backup center in Isaiah. And it worked. And Rocco loved his experience, loved the coaching staff, loved his teammates, loved everything that went into the season. But, you know, no one could have really saw it coming unless you were like, okay, how well is this thing going to work with no center? Well, they tried to play those guys. They did try to play those guys.
Yeah.
Rocco gets COVID and he comes back, and the team was already in a state of, we have to do things differently. Kawhi's not here. The backup, the not center thing ain't working. Terance has to play. Where's Terance going to play? Rocco's spot. Yep, that's how that worked. That's how you get Terance Mann playing 3 positions
in 3 games
before Thanksgiving. So I feel for Rocco. I can't see a scenario. I can, but I more clearly can see a scenario where he's not with the team next year.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
But we all know what it is with Marcus. Marcus has declined to the point where, and now his contract is in a situation where he's easier to move.
It goes up every year too, right? I think he's at like,
they're all up in a year.
Yeah.
I don't care about like how much money anyone's making next year. They have 1 year left.
They're all expiring.
And what we learned from Reggie Jackson's experience, and by extension, John Wall had a team option originally. But it's basically like, hey, you're on a 1 year deal, and we have the team control of how that goes. You got 2 point guards on 1 year deals. Both of those dudes wound up getting traded. All 3 of Marcus Morris Sr., Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, 1 year left on their deals. And before this all season, you're like, you got 2 years left in the deal. Here's how hard things are in the NBA when it comes to contracts. 1 year versus any more than 1 year. John Wall would have been a Clipper 2 years ago. But John Wall wasn't a Clipper because there's no way in hell the Houston Rockets, even the state of tank that they were in, they weren't going to buy out. When I told people when Serge Ibaka got traded and when I said the Clippers aren't done, they were monitoring the situation in Houston, and they got 2 guys, Rodney Hood and Semi Ojeleye, who were basically cuttable. They could have let them go. They weren't committed to them. They could have let them go as soon as they were able to. Rodney Hood stayed because the Rockets could not stomach buying out John Wall's contract with multiple years left. Okay.
Right.
They waited until John Wall picked up his player option and then they bought him out the following offseason. Semi Ojeleye wound up getting cut so that Amir could get promoted and Xavier Moon can get the 2-way to end the season. Kyle Lowry in Miami was the same situation this past year. If Kyle had 1 year left on his deal in Miami, he would have been bought out or they would have found a way to trade him. And it might have been to the Clippers because the Clippers were interested in getting a guy like Kyle. Kawhi Leonard was interested in that reunion. But the Heat kind of were like, screw it, we're just going to bench Kyle for a whole month while no one's paying attention to
Hang
us.
out, do your thing, yeah.
Yep. And we're going to bring him back as a backup, which is what happened. Gabe Vincent wound up starting the rest of the year. Like Kyle played damn near every game, and then all of a sudden the Heat put him on ice while they were trying to resolve the situation. The Heat were playing terrible Clippers-like basketball, except against the Clippers this past season. Okay, that team wound up in the NBA Finals.
Right.
Not just in the NBA Finals. They wound up going home Game 3 with home court advantage.
Right.
Not even the lockout Knicks could claim that. So,
but Jimmy Butler ain't Kawhi Leonard, Jason McIntyre. Sorry.
He's not.
You said he's had a better career than Kawhi Leonard. I'm sorry, tangent.
Because he get money to talk. And that's all that is.
That is very true. Yeah.
That's all that is. So, like, I bring all that up because the dynamics have to change. They know it has to change. And that's the position where it's got to change because that's the one position where if everyone comes back, you are, quote unquote, running it back. And that is
would be
unacceptable.
Totally.
And yes, and that would be unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
There is no running it back with this team. What? You're running 10 games back?
Yeah.
Is that what you're running back? It's not like you saw a full season with this team. They blew the team up. 2018 Cavaliers style. I'm talking like their trade deadline when they brought in Jordan Clarkson and they brought in George Hill and they brought in Larry Nance. Like, that's a blow up.
Right.
That is, you know what people mean, though. They're talking about Kawhi and PG. They think the experiment is over. They're never going to be able to win a championship because of the injury history. I'm with you, though. Like, the grass isn't always greener. Even if you could get high first-round picks for those guys from 2006 to 20...
Which you're probably not, by the way.
Right.
Who gets high draft picks? Though. Bad teams. What bad team is trading for those dudes?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? You're trying to pick swap with a team that you wish death upon? They're too good for that. Come on. And here's my other thing, real quick, because we're talking about contenders. You know how many playoff series the Denver Nuggets won before this postseason run? The last 2 years, they won 1. Okay. Last year, the team that came out of the West was the Golden State Warriors. Everyone wants to tie last year's championship to the dynasty. I tie last year's championship to the worst team in basketball in 2020 that didn't even make the bubble, literally the worst, and a team that lost in the play-in tournament to the Memphis Grizzlies, the same Grizzlies that everyone loves to clown on right now. The Phoenix Suns made the NBA Finals, beating the LA Clippers in the 2021 Western Conference Finals. Before that, they missed the playoffs 10 years in a row. The Lakers won a chip in the bubble. Before that, worst stretch in franchise history. 6 years out the playoffs. Even before the Warriors dynasty of 5 years, they won, 2 playoff series in 20 years?
Oh, yeah.
Like, there is no, because you weren't close, you're not there. The Clippers aren't close, but they would be foolish to break it up because they didn't win a playoff series because dudes got hurt. If Kawhi and Paul, let's be real talk, if Kawhi and Paul were on that floor against the Phoenix Suns in the conference quarterfinals, are we talking about things differently? If Kawhi and Paul are playing in a 7-game series against the Nuggets, do I think they win it? I don't know. But I would give them a damn good chance to try.
They could, yeah.
Thank you.
I know that the Nuggets have dominated them since the Western Conference Finals in the bubble. But I also know that the team that the Nuggets would have faced would have been different. The Nuggets very well could have beat them. But that's a series that you would have wanted to see, right? So
that's
you're
what
saying
I've been
that
saying.
because of all the dumb stuff that's happened, because of the fluke injuries and the fact that, some of these might be recurring, but because of some of that, you're saying in one of the most unserious Western conferences that we've seen to date, one that got even more unserious as the playoffs started, you're saying that they should basically disqualify themselves from competing with that group next year? Did you see what Zion's snaps look like? Do you see what announcement Adam Silver has been teasing the entire month in Memphis? Right. Did the Sacramento Kings just make the playoffs for the first time in 17 years? Like, do we realize like that is the Western Conference that the Clippers are in?
Yeah.
The Lakers made the Western Conference Finals. I thought they were going to win the damn championship. They couldn't get one game off at Denver, and LeBron's finally, for the first time ever, using the threat of retirement. That's the Western Conference. The Dallas Mavericks punted the play-in tournament, even though they outscored their opponents on the year. The other team in the East that could have did that, the Heat, that actually lost the play-in game, made it to the damn NBA Finals. I can't stress enough. This is not the time. Like, I know people are tripping about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being great. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the next playoff series he wins will be the first. No disrespect. It's just
true,
facts.
yeah.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is looking for his Kawhi. Guess what? The Clippers have their Kawhi. They have Kawhi and Paul playing together still. They have the same chance next year as they did the last 4 years. And you know what? It might end up the last 4 years. But having a chance to win something significant is more important than having the hope that comes with a slander-free zone that the Thunder are in because they keep winning trades with now an all-NBA player. You know why Shai got to be an all-NBA player? Because he was a rookie on a playoff team, gets traded to a team that didn't make the playoffs but had Chris Paul, which means you're going to make the playoffs and probably, lose prematurely. People don't think about how the Thunder should have probably won that game 7, but that's neither here nor there.
That out of bounds play.
And then Shai did not play a game in April for 2 years. You might get to be a damn good player if it's all on you and the ball's in your hands and you got to figure it out. And you are as good as Shai is and as wired as Shai is. Shai is an outstanding young talent, and it's not an accident that he's a monster now. Okay. But to think that the same player would have been the same player
and the Clippers
the same way if he would have stayed here is the kind of thing that, TLC warned y'all about chasing waterfalls. So, that's where we're at right now. The Western Conference is, no disrespect to the Nuggets, it's going to be harder for the Nuggets next year. And the rest of them teams, they all can talk themselves into having a real shot at it. What the Clippers can't do is say it's just health. But I think they all understand that a little urgency might make you a little bit better. And there's no urgency like your livelihood being at stake. I'm real talk.
Yeah.
Kawhi and PG, as comfortable as they are in California, how much y'all want this to work? Y'all want to do this in another city? You put in the front.
They got another year and then the player options. Right. That's how it lines up. They got next year and then the POs.
Exactly. And you had a front office that might be in a position where they feel like they need to save their jobs. Well, that can mean a whole lot of stuff. And if you're a player, you gotta perform, even if you are that star. If you believe in the team and not asking for your trade out. And again, trade out to where? Who's going to give you an opportunity? We just saw what happened with KD. KD got his trade. KD just got his head, not him, but he went to a team and that team wound up firing their head coach. Kyrie got his trade, and he didn't even get to play in the playoffs. Yeah. Kyrie Irving, outside of Tyronn Lue, has won a grand total of 2 playoff series in his entire career. Been on the court for teams that have won 2 in his entire career outside of T. Lue and David Blatt. It's not always green on the other side, and that goes for team level too. There's no greater scam than trade the picks and we're gonna keep our jobs because we just traded the star for picks. Danny Ainge can do that, but he in Utah. You in LA building a new stadium
with a brand new stadium on deck. The team is 100% paying. The owner's like, I'm paying for this. This needs to work
Exactly.
out.
The West can't be a whole lot worse next year, but at the same time, it's going to be harder for everybody. So if you know that and you go in, that's how. Look, the Clippers were embarrassing the bubble, right? What did they do? They were the best team in basketball until Kawhi and PG went in the health and safety protocols of the start of T. Lue's first season as head coach. That's the energy that you can expect going into this next year. Yeah, it's going to come down to health, because that was the attitude last year. If they started well last year, a lot of the frustrations don't fester and develop as soon as they did. Like if Kawhi winds up missing time in November again, Paul misses time in November again, that compromises your start. Yeah, feelings are going to be weird, and who knows what could happen. The basement is pretty low for the Clippers. I'm not going to front on that.
That's fair. I mean, when your guys miss, when there's a chance that you guys are going to miss some substantial time, then your top two guys, it feels like the basement's always low. But that's the thing you've signed
But
up
the difference with the Clippers, they do have a ceiling. They do have another level. They do have a level of competitiveness that they can get to. It can't just be Kawhi and Paul staying healthy. And that's why I say, look, they need to play harder. The coaches need to coach like they want to, that like they're not looking at the standings. The front office needs to put a team together to protect against and well as support the coaching staff that they have. And all of those factors lead to reasons why the Clippers can be better. Am I selling that right now? Hell no. I'm not going to tell you the Clippers are favorites. I didn't tell you last year. We got a whole lot that's going to have to happen between now and when the season starts in the fall. But I'm also going to say the Clippers would be foolish if they were to break it up now prematurely. It would give everyone a huge break. Oh, man. I don't know how the West is going to go, but at least we ain't got to worry about the Clippers.
That's true. Takes pressure off everyone else if you separate the two top 10, 15 guys. Obviously, Kawhi's a little higher than PG maybe. But Adam, what were you about to say?
Well, my concern is kind of relating to that. It takes the pressure off everyone, including the fan base. I don't want Clipper Nation to fall into this, I guess, section of fans where you just want to be comfortable, and that's a team of guys overachieving, but your ceiling is winning
the
a
2019
Clippers,
series. Basically.
Right. The little engine that could type of team. Like this is what you deal with sometimes as a team with expectations of winning a championship. And that has been new to this franchise relatively over the last 10 years. And there's going to be hardship and heartache. The Miami Heat fans are hurting right now. They've been knocking on the door multiple times the last 5 years. I know they got those rings with LeBron James, but this current iteration, they've been through heartache. It's not always that easy. You mentioned the Denver Nuggets winning one playoff series the last couple of seasons. They go through a guy tearing an ACL at that young of an age, and you wonder if he's ever going to be the same. But you keep knocking on the door, and you just hope that you have a little bit more luck, a little bit better fortune, and it's your year, it's your time. This 2-1-3 era, this is the closest they've had to really legitimately winning a championship. This group of guys, having Kawhi and PG gives you that opportunity and that credibility. You start over with young guys. I went over the last 10 years from 2006 to 2016, top 10 picks. Just over 25% of those guys became all-stars. When they broadcast the draft next Thursday, everybody gets talked about like they can be a future all-star in the first 30 picks.
Everybody.
It's crazy. And everybody has this false hope. That's not reality. The next SGA isn't guaranteed for the Clippers just because they hit the reset button and you want to do and go back in time to 2019 and start over. Like that's not
the
what
real
it is.
SGA wasn't even a top 10 pick. Go look at the 2018 draft. There's no way in hell the Clippers draft SGA. There's no way in hell he doesn't get there. Okay, that's the crazy thing about the draft. The draft. Look at the dudes who were drafted 5 years ago. 5 years ago, how many of those dudes are with the teams that they began their careers with? And that's the funniest thing about all this. It's like the draft is a crapshoot, but the draft is also going to take on more importance because we all know that there are going to be some misses. If you can hit, that is cost control talent for a number of years, especially when you already have the team that everyone's trying to get to. There are teams that are trying to get 2 wings. Like people want the Boston Celtics to break up because they're quote unquote tired of watching them, tired of watching them win in the conference finals. They broke through 1 year. Like, they literally got to the conference finals this year. They won more games this year than they did the year before with a backup coaching staff. Okay. It wasn't just Ime Udoka leaving and Missoula having to step up. Like, they lost Will Hardy to a head coaching job before all of that. They lost Damon Stoudemire before the playoffs during the regular season this past year. And they still they beat a very good Philadelphia 76ers team. They went into a game 6 on the road to save their season and then got to the conference finals. They did compete to force a game 7 after being down 3-0 with a backup coaching staff. You want to break up Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum just on that. That would be great because it's fresh and it's new and it's basically it's this idea
it could
of
even be Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown again. Like, that's what they would be pining
People
for.
don't like telling the same stories, watching the same thing, and they think that they get bored. Like, and again, it's the biggest scam that happens. Like, it would be a huge break to the rest of the teams in the league if they broke those dudes up.
Right.
Huge break.
So we're talking the draft. Last thing I want to ask before we head out of here, we mentioned it's in like a week, which is so crazy. We had Chomer on the show, and he mentioned that he would be not surprised, but it suggested that, since it's a 30th pick, it's a guaranteed contract for the team. So they gotta be on the team. Are they going to keep that 30th pick? Is there a chance they move back? Or like you mentioned, is the draft so important now that they're not that they weren't working hard before, but you know what I mean? Like, are they more zeroed in on something there?
I mentioned that I'm putting I don't even know when this pod comes out, but I mentioned
Tonight,
that I'm
but
putting.
you don't spoil anything. Yeah.
All right, so
Tease it.
Tease it. Yeah.
This is one of those nights where me and the laptop become one in the
yeah.
Welcome to the Matrix.
Watching the numbers. I've looked at tons of numbers, man. So like, I'm at the point where I can tell you dudes I haven't gotten to see play. I know what they're capable of on a skill level and a production level. I know what awards a bunch of dudes have made. The last piece for me is like watching the tape because I watch NBA basketball. This is the time of year where I watch college basketball, ironically, getting ready for the draft. And so I'm getting a feel for dudes. My colleague Sam Vicini, my guy, like, he has this big draft guide out. He has part of it, his top 100 or whatever. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, a team that has a 30th pick, you should only consider guys 30 and below, right? Wrong. For 2 reasons. Number one, just because a draft expert has his rankings doesn't mean that teams are going to think the same way. Totally. Okay. There's a lot of group speak that comes with this, and you have to understand that I always play the Jay-Z ignorant shit track around this time of the year. You can listen to it for yourselves. Like, this is the time of the year where you get a whole bunch of people saying stuff and they lying. So just because the industry is like, he's going to go number 1. Every now and again, Anthony Bennett goes number 1. Okay. So you have to understand that
Clipper great for a brief period of time.
Yeah, you have to understand that just because a guy is like ranked 15 by, Kristen's Peak doesn't mean that they're going to be the 15th draft pick. I remember they were talking about Kevon Looney and Kevin Porter Jr. as lottery picks. Those dudes both went 30th in their respective drafts. And those dudes are both NBA starters. Yeah. And not just fringe starters. Like, I mean,
one of them Kevon, a major contributor to
starter, that dude's a starter on the champion. I know Kevin Porter Jr. plays on one of the worst teams in basketball, but this dude also gave Drew Holiday 50. Okay. Like that, like, you can find dudes. So you have to assume that if you're at 30, just because a dude is ranked 20 doesn't mean he might slip and he might be available. So I gotta have a respectable range of those guys. But then the other reason that is even more real, if you follow the Clippers, just because you're at a spot, you can still trade up. Now, they didn't make a trade last year, and we made a big deal at L. Frank about, hey man, it's the first time you ever didn't make a trade on draft day ever. The dude ran, that was what, the 5th, 6th draft that he ran. So you expect them to make a move. And I would say they're more likely to move up in the draft than they are to move down or out considering where they are at 30. They would have loved to have been 20 this year. I can tell you
we
that.
all would have loved that, I think.
Well, some teams you don't care. Some teams you're literally punting that pick because you're looking to trade it. You're putting up for sale. The Clippers, I believe, would have wanted to be higher in this year's draft. And what that means to me is they will probably I can't be surprised if they find a way to go up. I won't be surprised if the draft is about reading the board. Okay. So you can't go into the draft with your head set on moving up, just like you can't go in the draft thinking you're going to trade the number 3 pick to the LA Clippers
for PG.
Okay. So if you're at 30, it's like you are prepared to possibly go and get a guy that is slipping way far. You know, you're not really tripping at pick 10 and 15, but if it's pick 20, it's like, oh, he's still there. Maybe those calls intensify and you look to investigate what it would take to move up, you know? And maybe there's a bunch of guys and you're like happy with 5 guys and you're looking at 4 of them still being available when pick 25 comes around. You're probably like, we're going to sit right here and take someone. So there's a lot of things that happen in the draft, and I think a lot of people have to understand it. This is not the NFL. In the NFL, free agency starts first, and picks can just go whenever they go. In the NBA, because of our wonderful CBA environment that we've always been in, not just because of this new one, you know, you're picking, but sometimes you wind up picking for another team. Okay, people have to understand that. The Denver Nuggets had the 13th pick in 2017, and they could have picked Bam Adebayo, who wound up going 14. You know who wound up picking? Nobody. They wound up selecting Donovan Mitchell for the Utah Jazz so that they could get 2 years of Trey Lyles and Tyler Lydon. The NBA champion Denver Nuggets, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, you're gonna say Moutier. Oh man. That's
oh my God. Well, it's crazy that the draft is so soon. I'm very excited now to think about if the Clippers might move up. Law, we want to thank you so much. This has been so much fun. We're happy that you're back on the grid a little bit, at least with Clippers fans. So when does your draft primer come out? You've been mentioning a little bit.
I'm literally gonna peace out to y'all. Y'all gonna tag me in what y'all gonna tag me in. I'm literally like, I'm trying, you know, there's gonna be 30 players that I have a sentence on.
Let's go.
I can't look, I need people to
don't
read.
Spoil it. Yeah, don't spoil
I need
it.
people to read. Like, you know, I think y'all judge too many of us writers because of what we tweet or what videos we post to, you know, TikTok, or I should be like Belichick and be like Topgram.
Yeah.
You know,
snap face.
Yeah.
You know, Zion, stay off of snap face, bro.
Yeah.
But or maybe get on. I don't know what that is. But like, yo, we write, man. Some of us actually about this life, you know, I love doing this. And I know some people, they click out after the first 500 words, and that's their prerogative. You know, my job is to make the first 500 make you want to get through the whole thing. But I'm telling you, this is something that I'm really excited to put out. I really thought about this. There are dart throws because it's the draft. Every draft is a dart throw.
You mean you're not going to tell us the exact pick at number 30 for the
look, man. You want to give me you know, all of ownership of the DMV or New Mexico, Arizona region, or whatever job is available, y'all can do that. But every head personnel executive, it's a dart throw. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. We have not gotten the draft down to a science. Just because we're not picking, you know, ground bound centers in the top 10, or just because we've discovered that small point guards can be selected later, that doesn't mean we figured this draft thing out. That goes for the front office people. That goes for people like me who just is happy to get a chance to learn and cover the picks when they are made. So that being said, it's only entertainment. Enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it. And I hope you get through it, because as much as I enjoy it, I take it seriously. So hopefully Thursday morning, and we'll see how things go next week. And most importantly, we will see how things go years down the line when we got to talk about how Michael Kidd-Gilchrist went from being, a great top 2 pick to a guy who, wondering if he ever will get that form right.
Man, well, La, I cannot wait to read the piece. Thank you so much. Comes out a week before the draft. We're going to be back next week with a live stream hang, I think, during the draft, which could be a good time. Maybe with Carl Tart. Who knows? You can find us on Twitter at ClippersPod. You can find Law on Twitter at Law Murray, the new. That is NU. Adam Oslam is follow Adam A. I am at Chuck Mockler. Will Updike sends his regards. He could not be here. We thank everyone for listening. Please rate us and review us. Adam, anything you want to say to these wonderful Clippers fans as we let them go on this way too cool June evening?
Yeah. First of all, I'm glad we could be the primer before Law writes his draft primer. Second of all, at Clippers Podcast on YouTube, at Clippers Pod on Twitter is where you can find us.
Let's go. We will see y'all next week.
All right.